The METUS Tech Show.
Welcome to the METUS Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
I like how you guys bounce back and forth between heat pump talk and food talk.
The METUS Tech Show.
All right, so Bryn, you're going to Minneapolis at the end of this month.
Yeah. Yep.
And I kind of did some research because I always do research on trips that we take and what foods we can find in these areas because a lot of places in the United States I haven't been to. Yeah. Minneapolis is one of them. Have you ever been to?
I was born in Burnsville, Minnesota, which I guess is right outside of Minneapolis, but I moved here when I was 4.
Oh, okay.
So and I thought about it. I'm like, I don't know what Minneapolis is known for.
So you had Minneapolis baby food.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're known for cold.
Oh, really?
And walleye. Is it walleye or sockeye? They got a fish out there.
Yeah.
Fish is very good. I think it's better than this salmon. But I'm going to tell you, if you're going to Minneapolis, you got to go to a place called The Nook.
Okay.
They get these burgers in there. The burgers are just amazing.
Yeah.
And I guess they're known for a particular type of burger. And Steve's got a list. I'm sure he's going to tell us all about it. Can't wait.
No, I'm not good with geography, but is that where Fargo is?
That's North Dakota.
Oh, okay.
Which
So
I'm
now,
sure is
same accent?
Yeah, well, if you go to
Oh,
northern,
yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so I got a list of unique foods from Minneapolis, and this first one has got me intrigued. It's called the Juicy Lucy.
Yes.
Right? So it looks, and I'm looking at a picture of it. It looks like a burger.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's just 2 patties, and they put the cheese between the 2 patties.
Yeah.
I think is what makes it a Juicy Lucy, which sounds like a
So
great
here it
idea.
says a cheese stuffed burger.
Right.
That's got my attention. That sounds amazing. All right, so the Juicy Lucy, that's definitely something you should
Yeah,
probably go
check
looking
that
for. Yeah, and yeah, look at that. It's
it's wicked good.
Listeners can't.
You know what's
can't
funny
see
is
this,
so
but-
I didn't know that was a Minnesota thing. I've made one before. So I've heard of Juicy Lucy. I don't remember how I heard of it, but yeah, you basically just stuff the cheese inside the burger and then cook it like you normally would.
Because
then when you bite in, because the cheese gets steamed, basically
Yeah.
it becomes this oozy. Oh,
But you know what else I like about that? Because annoying, you get a cheeseburger at a restaurant, and you want to put something on it, like a ketchup or mustard or salt and pepper or whatever, and then you take out the bun, and the cheese sticks to the bun, and now you just ruin the whole experience. So I like this. It seems logical.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, they got something with tater tots too.
Yeah, tater tot hot dish. So it's a casserole, and in Minneapolis, it's known as the hot dish. So anything with tater tots, you got my attention.
Yep.
Right, it's a loaded tater tots. I totally love tater tots. So that looks amazing as well.
And they got something called a pasty.
A pasty, what's that?
I don't know. It reminds me of an empanada. And again, these are I've never seen one or had one, but it says it's made by placing an uncooked filling, typically meat and vegetables, in the middle of a flat, short crust pastry circle, bringing the edges together in the middle and crimping over the top to form a seal before baking. And I guess it came from the UK. And that's the thing about Minnesota. There's people who settle there, originally from all over. A lot of Scandinavian food is very big there. German food, I'm sure, is very big.
So pickled herring. As far as Scandinavian food, we got pickled herring, Swedish meatballs. Swedish meatballs are good.
Yeah, I like those.
No eggs, right?
No, don't do it.
Brendan doesn't like eggs.
Yeah, and he wouldn't like the hopple popple. It's an egg casserole made with leftovers. Is basically I'm not gonna. Right, and they got their own pizza.
Hopple popple. It's almost like we're something that Gary would come up with, and something they sell in Jersey.
Yeah,
some sort of pork product.
Slumgullion. Slumgullion is made with ground beef, canned tomato, macaroni, and occasionally cream of corn. They are often served at potlucks along with hot dish.
It's like American chop suey.
Yeah.
Yeah, known for wild rice. I'm always good for some wild rice.
Yeah.
I'll
never say no to rice. It's a good side.
Yeah, walleye.
Oh, yeah, that's the fish.
Yeah.
I've had some of that. You get it local at Trader Joe's. They vacuum seal it. And people have told me it's like salmon but better. And I'm going to tell you, it's like salmon but better. And I'd love to go there and get some fresh, some fresh walleye.
Yeah, I had walleye probably about 4 or 5 years ago. We were at Chiller training in La Crosse, and there was an outdoor, trying to think of the name of it. It was like an outdoorsy freshwater fish restaurant I went to with Paul and Cesar, and I had walleye there. They had sunfish, basically panfish, like freshwater panfish, and yeah, so it was pretty good. They're also known for, Minneapolis is known for bars and not the drinking bars.
Oh, okay.
We're talking desserts. All right. We're talking like brownie bars.
Yeah.
Lemon bars. Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So definitely check this stuff out when you're out there. Cheese curds, of course.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I've ever had those.
And pho. They're known for pho.
Which spells pho. But
Pho.
we know from
Yes.
getting yelled at, it's pho.
I'm yet to try pho. I haven't tried pho yet. I see it all over Georgia. I see it in certain places, and we're going to have to make a stop somewhere.
There was
and try
actually a place when I was in Houston last week that had pho. I didn't try it, but I thought about it. I ended up getting this place called Smash Burger, which is basically like a Five Guys, but way more topping options.
it. Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah, so that's all I got from Minneapolis.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at breakfast dishes. They got something called lefse. Is made with riced potatoes. Can include all-purpose wheat flour. Includes butter, milk, cream, or lard. It is cooked on a large flat griddle. In Minnesota, it's typically made with potatoes. It's eaten plain or filled. I think we just, I don't like this talking about food we haven't actually eaten because my mouth is watering again.
Yeah.
This always happens.
And it's tough because I'm trying to lose a few pounds, and going traveling and trying to eat carb free is pretty tough.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Especially when you really like tater tots.
And next week, Bryn, you and I are going to Dallas.
Yep.
And basically, there's only one thing to talk about in Dallas.
Barbecue.
That's it.
The hard A.
Barbecue. And maybe chicken wings.
Yeah,
right?
the chicken wings. You got Duff's
So-
out there, chicken wings.
So a lot of travel this year, and we're going to try and theme these podcast episodes around the food that we're traveling to.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Naturally.
All right, I won't be with you guys in Dallas. I'll be in Atlanta, so I'm just going to be going to my
Umaito.
Yeah,
Every day.
I was in. I was in Atlanta last week for just 2 days, and I guess how many times I went there. I went there twice.
Oh, okay.
Went there for dinner both nights.
Do you guys remember the Chinese restaurant we went to there?
Yes.
Yeah.
That where you get
Bento.
the bento boxes?
Red ginger.
You
Yeah.
love that.
Oh, it's so good. I can't believe how much food you get for
Yeah,
how
I
little
wasn't too happy with my
costs.
bento last time. I was a little bent on my bento.
You got Mongolian beef the time before that, which I think you liked.
Yeah, that was
was
good.
good.
Yeah.
I'm not a sushi person, so I didn't realize a
help.
bento is basically
Yeah, you do get
you're
some
getting
California
sushi.
rolls.
No, that was good stuff.
But I forgot what else came in that bento box that I wasn't too excited about.
Came with the spring rolls. It had the dumplings.
Yep.
And then it had the California rolls. And then whatever you picked for your
Red Ginger.
main. Yeah.
That was the name of the
Red
restaurant.
ginger. Yeah.
Wicked good.
Yeah,
You can
right
go
up
there with
near the
about
Kroger.
12 people and spend about $50.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
And if you all get Sapporos.
Yeah. It was very economical, I'll say.
It's good stuff.
Anyway, welcome to the METUS Tech Show, everybody. We are going to continue the A2L kickoff with, I'm going to try and narrow down certain topics in A2L because part 1 and part 2, we kind of threw a lot at everybody in 2 episodes.
Yeah, and then we followed it up with Don Gillis last week.
Right.
So yeah, I like this idea. Let's just talk about a specific now. So we've given everybody, I think, 3 episodes of generalities. Now it's time to get a little more specific.
And so everybody's going to have to wrap their head around this Amin and Mmax
Yep.
concept, right? So it's Amin is our room area, right? And we're looking at the smallest room area in the home before we install the system, and that's going to dictate how much refrigerant is going to be allowed in the system and whether you can install the system or not.
Correct.
The Mmax. So, Bryn, take it away.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what's important to, why these charts are so important to adhere to, particularly when we talk about the 1-to-1 and the ported, is that what you have to realize is when with our 410A equipment, right? Let's say an indoor unit, either out of flare or the coil itself were to start leaking. When that leak occurs, the refrigerant is all leaked into the space, right? You got a 1-to-1, that wall mount starts leaking or the flare on that wall mount starts leaking. It's going to leak into the space. With 410, we don't really worry as much because it doesn't have that slight flammability rating. The same thing is going to happen with our 1-to-1 imported units. If you have a leak on the indoor coil or on the flare that's inside, all of the refrigerant in that system will eventually leak into that space. So these charts that are in our service and install manuals, these Amin, Mmax charts, are to make sure that when that happens, right, if you do have a leak and all of the refrigerant enters into that space, that we're not exceeding that refrigerant concentration limit. That's really all these charts are there for. There's no difference as far as installing it goes. It's the same thing that same way you would install it no matter what, right? And it's just a matter of understanding that just because this is it's a slightly flammable refrigerant, there's no method for mitigating that refrigerant on our 1-to-1 imported units. We're not doing anything to prevent that refrigerant from making it into the space. So because of that, we need to be aware of how much refrigerant can safely enter that space without it becoming a safety risk, basically. So that's what these charts are there for. So the way that we broke this up is talking about a 1-to-1, talking about a ported, and then talking about the smart multi, where we do actually have some means to prevent that refrigerant from entering the space.
And let's talk about the chart for a second. When you're looking at this chart, for those of you that haven't laid eyes on this chart yet, basically we have the Amin on the left. In some charts, it's going to be the Amin will be on the right. Either way, it doesn't matter. First column we're looking at is our room area.
Right.
The smallest room area in that installation. And you're going to see metric there. You're going to see imperial.
Right.
So you're going to see pounds for refrigerant.
In kilos.
Yeah, or kilos. So know what you're looking at. All of our manuals are set up that way. And like Bryn said, there's a chart for every system, basically.
Yep. Any install manual will have one.
I know I was listening to one of our episodes this morning. I love to listen to our episodes over and over because I learn from the episodes we've done, right? And Scott mentioned there's a chart for every indoor unit. Is that correct?
It's the same chart. So, but we put it everywhere. Like every install manual has the.
Oh, so
the
it's the
chart.
same exact chart.
Yep.
All right, but there is a different chart for every outdoor unit.
Correct. Yeah, basically.
Well, when we say every outdoor unit, we're saying the type of outdoor unit,
Right.
1-to-1, ported, or smart multi.
Right. Yeah. Now that's actually a good thing to bring up is that these charts, for a 1-to-1 versus a ported, they're not very different. And the reason why is because the mitigation strategy hasn't changed. Right. So these standards are not made by us. We didn't make up these charts, right? This is the chart that we have in our manual to make sure that we are staying safe and compliant with this slightly flammable refrigerant.
Yeah.
And because we don't have a specific mitigation strategy for a ported unit, we are limited by the same amount of refrigerant in the same amount of space, right? So for a 1-to-1, for example, right, 100 square foot room on a 1-to-1 system, your maximum total charge for that system is 5 pounds, 4 ounces. On a ported system, right, the same rule applies. 100 square foot room, because the potential is that the entire charge can leak into that space. 100 square foot room is still going to be 5 pounds, 4 ounces, whether it's ported or 1-to-1, because we don't have any way to prevent that refrigerant from entering that space if there's a leak. So it's not like, it's not something that we kind of make up as we go or figured out on our own. This is something that allows us to stay within that compliance or that safety range.
Now, is a contractor ever going to have to remove refrigerant from the system?
Nope.
Okay.
No, which is in line with what we've always been
So
doing.
it's either a yes or no on installation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no removing refrigerant. If anything, we can, we talked about this on past episodes, we can shorten the line set.
Correct.
We all know that longer line sets lead to more refrigerant.
Right.
So you may have to rework your installation,
Yes.
your application.
I want to make a couple of points here, and they're obvious. I think we've mentioned them every episode. When we talk about measuring the rooms, we're not talking about anything to do with load calculations. Those have to be done, right? In a 10 by 10 room, if you have a 10 by 10 room, you're not just going to put the smallest unit we have without doing a load calculation, because chances are you're going to be oversized. Now,
Right.
put all the, the M-min and A-min and Mmax aside. Those are two different separate things. So
Right.
again, measure the rooms, measure the home, because you need that for load calculations. But now you need it for the load count. So let's take a 10 by 10 room, because you had an example that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So I got a 1-to-1 M series wall mounted unit, and let's just say the room is 10 by 10.
Sure.
So what do I need to know now?
So it's the main thing that we have to pay attention to is the total planned charge. That is what the Mmax is being compared to, is your total planned charge. So what do I mean when I say total planned charge? What is the factory charge on that equipment? And then what is your additional charge based on your line set length? Right? So let's just take the example of an FX unit, which is just an M series 1-to-1 wall mount system, right? On a 9,000 BTU wall mount head, the factory charge on that outdoor unit is 2 pounds, 12 ounces. So if that 9,000 BTU head, which is likely oversized for a 10 by 10 room anyway, but if for whatever reason we put that 9,000 BTU head in a 10 by 10 room, we still have about 2.5 pounds roughly before we get to that threshold of 5 pounds, 4 ounces for a 10 by 10 room. So just for fun, I did the math on how much line set that would be to get us to that charge, right? To that 5 pounds, 4 ounces. Once, our 9,000 BTU wall mount units are pre-charged up to 25 feet. And then we add 0.22 ounces per foot beyond that 22 feet. So you would need a total line set length of about 220 to 225 feet before you exceed 5 pounds, 4 ounces in that system.
That's a lot of line.
Are we ever allowed to put 225 feet
No,
on an M Series
because
1-to-1?
what's the maximum?
Right, yeah.
It's a lot less than that.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe
So
it's 65 feet. If it's still the same as 410A, it's
Right,
65
yeah.
feet for a 9,000.
You'll never see 225 on an M Series 1-to-1. That
Right.
that's never been what we do. It hasn't changed. Right? We have a maximum line set length. It's in the install manual. It's never going to be 225 feet. So by and large, especially for those smaller 1-to-1 systems, the 6s, the 9s, the 12s, things like that, we will almost never have to worry about this Amin Mmax chart.
So to your point, a 9,000 BTU, obviously way oversized for a 10 by 10 room.
Correct.
Right. That's actually going to prevent people from installing larger systems, way larger systems than it should be in that room.
Yeah.
It happens quite a bit in the mini split world, right? You got a small room. The smallest unit you can get is 9,000. It's way oversized. They're going to start having to customize the unit, cut jumpers, shut off the fan, and try other strategies.
We're better off if there's space in the basement or the attic. You're better off putting a ducted unit. They're doing 2 rooms with one unit, maybe 3 or a small bathroom or something.
Yeah.
But that's the way to do it.
Yeah, so these mitigation strategies are actually going to deter people from oversizing a
potentially.
system for a room.
And Don Gillis mentioned this last week. It's all about the limits of flammability. Everything that's combustible has a lower limit and a higher limit of flammability. If there's not enough oxygen or too much oxygen or not enough gas or too much gas, it won't ignite.
Right.
So what we're saying is this 9,000 BT unit can leak out its full charge, but we're not going to reach that lower limit of flammability.
Exactly.
So there is no danger. Now, there are other things that we don't consider up until now, and we're still not going to, because it's not going to make a difference. It's not going to saturate that room. Refrigerant, as we all know, displaces oxygen, but it's not going to be enough to displace all the oxygen in that room.
Right.
So, and Brent, we were talking before this. I think you've got the right attitude. A lot of people, I hear a lot of people, both in our industry, in our company, talking, oh, this is going to change everything. It's really not that big of a deal.
Right.
The chances are you wouldn't put a 9,000 in a 10 by 10 anyway because of the size.
Right.
But if you do, go to the maximum line set, and it's still not going to be enough to make a difference in this example we have. But I think the key here is for anybody installing a system, anybody sizing a system, anybody going out there to price a system, take a look at those charts.
Yeah.
Now, we've got Diamond System Builder, which I know we're going to talk about more in a minute. But for those contractors who says, I don't need Diamond System Builder, it's easy enough to do a 1-to-1. You know what? Use Diamond System Builder, because it's just going to be what's the word I'm looking for? It's just going to be a double check. It's just going to check your math and check, because you got to put in the room dimensions now.
Yeah. Yeah. So new DSP update, when that happens, it will actually account for the charts, and it'll actually, make you fill in that room size, your minimum room area, just to be sure. So like, let's say you are building a larger system, you're actually going to put in that square footage for every single room. and it's going to find which one is the lowest square footage and compare that against the chart for the system you're building. And if it's a conflict where the total planned charge exceeds that limit, that Mmax limit, it will immediately alert you saying, hey, you're too much refrigerant for that small of a space. So that's nice. It's a way to dummy check. But the nice thing is that for one-to-one systems, majority of the time, you're not going to have to worry about too much refrigerant in that system, just because our one-to-ones don't carry large amounts of refrigerant in them. It's a single system. We're not, it's not like old R22 where it's, 15, 20 pounds in a residential unit. It's a lot smaller amount of refrigerant. So very rarely are we going to see a conflict, which is great because that means most contractors on a one-to-one install, they're going to do the check and most of the time be fine.
I know what some of the listeners are thinking. When I'm getting my room area, am I measuring ceiling height? Am I measuring cubic feet?
Right.
So I had this question from sales.
Yep.
What about cubic feet? Well, the height restriction of the unit is what plays into that height.
Yeah.
We're just measuring the square footage.
And the other big reason for that too is the refrigerant is heavier than air.
Correct. It's going to sink
So
the
that's the
lowest
thing
point.
is the reason why square footage is more important. Cubic feet does play a role, but the main reason why we pay more attention to square footage is because when that refrigerant does leak, or if that refrigerant leaks, it's going to settle on the floor. And the whole thing that we care about is accumulation, right? Like we want to make sure that refrigerant doesn't accumulate and increase the volume in the space. So when we have leaks, our fans can go into high speed to help dissipate that accumulation of refrigerant. And as long as we're not exceeding that limit, we don't have any issues.
Right. And if you do have a 10 by 10 room and this leak does happen, it's going to sink because it's heavier than air.
Yep.
And now you've got a door that may be closed. Well, there's probably a gap under that door, and guess where this refrigerant's going to go to? It's going to. So we've got that.
Yeah.
Too, so.
And I kind of like these mitigation strategies because they're going to prevent a lot of mistakes in the field. One of them being what we just talked about before, oversizing a room, a system for the space. The other one is because there's a minimum install height for the wall unit,
Correct.
6 feet.
Yes. Yep.
So what happens out in the field quite a bit, and especially in like finished attics and, gabled ceilings, contractors have a tendency to take a wall unit and misapply it and put it 4 to 5 feet up on a wall.
Right. However high up it'll fit.
Yeah, and I've seen one right above a headboard on a bed.
Yeah.
And that's misapplied, and that's going to cause all kind of overheating issues and all that. So these mitigation strategies are going to prevent a lot of these things.
Right.
So I love it. It's music
true.
to my ears.
Yep. Yeah, it's called a wall unit, but it's really a high wall unit.
Yes.
And our floor unit is really what I'm going to call a low wall unit.
low wall
The MFZ still goes on they call it a floor unit, but it still goes on the wall low.
Right.
So that's what it's supposed to be. That's the application for it.
Yeah.
So that 6 feet is nothing new.
Yep.
I think it's always been there. It's just one of those things no one really ever considered. And we've all seen it. We've all seen them installed too high, too close to the ceiling, so they can't get the air in there. And we've seen them installed too low, and they just don't work.
Right. They end up with comfort issues. So this kind of tackles both.
That's when it comes into cutting jumpers, customizing function settings, and that doesn't always pan out, doesn't always work.
And while you're checking the manual for all these things that we're talking about here, check for your clearances, your minimum clearances from the top, from the left, from the right, from the bottom. Check for all that.
The great thing about the Amin and Mmax charts, they're in the installation manuals and the service manuals. So you don't have to just go to the installation manual. You'll find one in the service manual as well.
Yeah.
So, Brent, is there anything? So that was a 1-to-1. Is there anything different I need to do with a port style unit?
So no, so like I was saying earlier, the ported style Amin Mmax chart is almost identical, if not identical, because of the fact that there is no mitigation strategy. So a 10 by 10 room can still only handle that 5 pounds 4 ounces. Here's the beauty, and we've talked about this on a previous podcast. Our ported systems, we no longer add any additional trim charge.
That's awesome.
Right? We're pre-charged for however much line set that you're going to use, right? We go up to 230 feet on that system. You're pre-charged for all 230 feet. You never have to add trim charge. So the calculation's a little bit easier because all you have to do now is look at the factory charge on the outdoor unit and compare that to the Mmax Amin chart. So you find your lowest square foot room. Same example, you've got a 10 by 10 room. You get 5 pounds 4 ounces. And as far as I can remember, because I don't have it right in front of me, but as far as I can remember, neither of our ported units, either size, are pre-charged for more than 5 pounds 4 ounces. So again, with a ported system, largely a non-issue. Most of the time it's a non-issue, but we still have to do that work, right? Just take that smallest room where a head's going to be mounted, take your square footage of that space, compare it to the chart. If that Mmax on the chart is higher than the factory charge, you're done. You can install the whole thing. Don't worry about anything. Yep. Now, one thing to mention with the portage is that there is a mitigation strategy a little bit when you compare to a one-to-one. Most of our one-to-ones on the M series sides, like a wall mount or a one-way cassette, they're not going to monitor a refrigerant sensor on a one-to-one application. So if if the system were to leak, there's going to be no strategy involved. It's just going to run. It's a little bit different with ducted units. The ducted units, the fans will go into high speed. Same with a floor mount. Ported systems, the only thing that changes is those units that have refrigerant sensors that are always monitoring. If it detects the leak, will go into high fan speed, and the other units go into standby. So that's the only thing that changes with the ported units is that when a unit that has a refrigerant sensor that is always monitoring, regardless of what it's attached to, it will send that particular unit when it detects a leak into high fan, and the other units go into standby. But it doesn't change the chart, right? We're still going by the same chart.
The same.
Simple enough.
Yeah. And now smart multi branch box system.
Yes. And this is probably the one that will probably take the most effort as far as making sure that you can install this, because there are multiple Amin and Mmax charts in the smart multi manual. And the reason for that is based on location. So where indoor units or branch boxes are being installed can affect the total charge for that, allowable for that system.
All right, so let's go through it.
Yeah. So keeping the same example, 100 square foot space, if it's a 36 or 48 non-hyperheat smart multi, the maximum charge for that system is 20.28 pounds. For any of our hyperheat or the 5-ton smart multi, a 100 square foot room can have 27.55 pounds, so a little bit more. So the reason why the same square footage for a smart multi has such a higher maximum charge allowance is because of those solenoid valves and the refrigerant recovery mode that we have on the smart multi. If any of our indoor units on a smart multi detect a leak, the system will essentially, air quote, pump down, right? It's going to shut down the liquid line using that solenoid. It's going to pull all that refrigerant back to the outdoor unit at about 30 PSI on the suction side. It's going to shut down the gas side solenoid valve. So we're actually trapping that refrigerant outside. So we actually can have more charge in that system because we're actually going to pull a lot of it back in the event of a leak.
We'll be right back.
Hey, listeners, if you like the METUS Tech Show, you should check out our YouTube channel called the METUS Training Network. That's METUS Training Network. Head on over to the METUS Training Network for tons of videos and programming made for HVAC professionals just like you. We've got technical training tips, HVAC program updates, and episodes of our new HVAC talk show called The Comfort Zone. Of course, you also get to catch up on more episodes of the METUS Tech Show as well. Head on over to YouTube and subscribe to the METUS Training Network today. Now, back to the METUS Tech Show. All right, so our mitigation strategy on the smart multi is a lot more strict.
Right.
Because of those pump down solenoids.
Yep, because we have that function, it makes it easier, or it makes it safer for us to put more refrigerant in that system. Because now, unlike a one-to-one imported, if an indoor coil leaks, not all of the system charge is going to leak into that space. Now we have a way to pull that refrigerant out of the living space and into the outdoor unit with those solenoid valves.
Interesting. You know what? We talked about this before, and I guess I must have not have been listening or something.
That's why I listen to our past episodes.
I know.
I go back and I learn something again, right?
Well, you know something? That's happened to me. I'll listen to an episode, and then I go, I don't remember saying that. And then I'll ask a question, and somebody will give me an answer, and I'm like, I don't remember that answer. It's part of getting old.
Sometimes you're not listening to what the person, because in the podcasting world, we're sitting here and Paul and I are probably thinking of what we're going to come up with next and what we're going to ask Bryn next. So we miss what Bryn just said or Scott just said. So yeah.
I was just going to say to bail you guys out.
I was thinking of a Juicy Lucy, honestly.
But I was going to say, just to bail you guys out, between me and Scott, we talk very quickly. And sometimes even when Scott talks, and I know exactly what he's talking about, sometimes I'm like, how does he say this stuff so fast? I can't keep up with him.
Yeah.
So, yes, we do allow for more charge in a system for the same amount of square footage because of that mitigation strategy. Now, there are some limitations depending on where you mount your branch box, and there are limitations based on whether or not you have an indoor unit in the basement. Those are the two big ones. If an indoor unit is in a basement or if a branch box is in a living space, the chart is going to change. So, things to pay attention to. If you have a branch box in a living space, and a non-living space is identified as behind a wall, in a ceiling, in an unfinished attic or an unfinished basement. Those are non-living spaces, which means no restriction, right?
Okay.
Put them in a non-living space, you're going to go off that chart I just talked about. Now, once it goes into a living space, like, sometimes, when I was installing them, we'd put a branch box in a basement, but it was a finished basement, it was somebody's office or, a living room or something like that. Once we install it there, we have a minimum height of 6 feet. So it has to be installed 6 feet off the ground, and our total charge, or our Mmax, goes way down. So for a 100 square foot room with a branch box in a living space, you're only allowed about 5.5 pounds in that system. Now that's a headache because what smart multi do you know of that you've ever charged or done the calculation for that the total charge is less than 5.5 pounds?
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah.
So realistically, we kind of have to install that in a non-living space. We have the branch box enclosures, install it outside.
So that's going to become a popular thing now.
Yeah. Right. Put it outside.
No, very rarely are you going to. I can't think. I mean, I'm sure it could happen where you'll finish the basement. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, typically if you're going to finish a basement, there's always a mechanical area where you're going to have a boiler or a furnace, a water heater, the water meter, things like that. That's still not considered a living space. But if you have a small basement and that's it, and you're going to put an office down there, now it changes things. Now you got to be careful. But,
right. You may need to think about reconfiguring.
And how are we classifying a closet? What if I got? I'm thinking of a mobile home.
Okay.
There's typically an air handler somewhere in a closet at the very end. And so what about that?
So technically, right, when we define those non-living spaces, a closet would be considered a non-living space, right? It's not something that's somewhere where somebody's going to occupy.
Okay.
So if you have a branch box in a small closet and that's also where your air handler is, that's a mech room, right? It's a non-living space. So no issues with restriction there.
All right, good.
Yeah. And typically, when I would install a branch box system, they were almost always installed kind of on the edge or corner of a house because ultimately you're going to take those line sets to your heads. They're going right back outside through line hide to all the different parts of the house. If you put a branch box in the middle, sometimes you end up with that kind of nest of line set going all different directions throughout the house. So a lot of times we did kind of tuck them into corners, which makes it a little bit easier because then you can kind of enclose them in a non-living space, even if you were to finish.
Yeah. So in talking to contractors over the years, they're always looking, especially on an existing home that they're adding a smart multi to, they prefer to install the branch box on the outside of the house.
Right.
So that's why that enclosure, that weatherproof enclosure is huge.
Right.
Because they're mounting that branch box on the outside of the house. They're running their line hide up the side of the house, hitting most of the rooms, if not all of them.
Yep.
In that type of application. Yeah. Now, brand new home that may be getting a smart multi-system, just keep in mind, where is that branch box going to end up living?
Right.
Is it in a living space? Is it in a non-living space? So things to think about.
Yeah. Yep. And so then the only other restriction that you end up with is if you have an indoor unit that is going to be mounted in a basement, pretty much for the same reasons. So 100 square foot space. If your indoor unit is in the basement, the maximum charge is 6.39 pounds. So again, big restriction. A lot of times what's going to end up happening in that case, all right, you've got a branch box system. You want to put a 9,000 B2 in a small room or 6,000 B2 in a small room in the basement. If it's over that 6.39 pounds, you're going to have to consider putting that on a 1-to-1.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Because we just discussed that 1-to-1, you're almost never going to have a restriction. So if you're, building a branch box system, but one of those units is going to be in the basement, you might want to consider just throwing that on a 1-to-1 and avoid the headaches.
No, good to know. So this is good. I hope, because I think the people who are listening who are going to go sell these jobs, that's where it has to begin there.
Yeah.
We don't want to find out when the installer shows up that, you got a restriction. So we don't want to find out when the service guy shows up for some other reason, a comfort reason, maybe that, hey, there's a restriction here. So it's the person going out there to price this job. Hopefully they're listening to this, and hopefully they attend our applications classes.
Yeah, yep. And the only other thing I'll mention too, because a lot of our instructors have gotten some pushback on these situations where there's that large restriction. We talk about things as installed, right? As a company, right? When we talk about when you can install a unit in the basement, we don't talk about third-party mitigation. We don't talk about third-party exhaust fans. There may be ways to get around these restrictions based on ASHRAE standards. It's just not something that we discuss or we kind of cover or we deal with because we're talking about our product, right? When we build these manuals, it's not based around what you could get away with using third-party equipment. It's as installed. These are your rules. So you may have to do your own work as far as third-party
pass-through grills, ventilation,
exhaust fans, things like that. Yep. But yeah, that's the basics of it. I mean, the Amin Mmax really only adds one additional step to sizing for installation, and that's just picking your smallest room area, making sure you don't exceed the maximum charge with your planned charge.
All right. That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bryn. And thanks for putting all this together for us. And we know who to go to if we have questions.
Yeah, Scott.
Yeah.
Now, when Diamond System Builder is released with the new A2L updates, you may be running everything through Diamond System Builder, not even looking at these charts. But as you said, it may be easier just to look at these charts.
Right.
But if I'm building a smart multi-system, I'm going to use Diamond System Builder.
Every time.
Yeah. And it lays everything out for you. You can see all your D rates and everything in the additional charge.
Yep.
Comes up with your additional charge and you put all your line lengths in. But the great thing about the new DSB update is it's going to have an area for you to put in your square footage, right? The heights of the units are already preloaded in.
Yep.
So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of this. And it's just, if you haven't used Diamond System Builder, it's free software. It's available on mylinkdrive.com for download. So definitely check it out, and we'll try and keep you updated for the release of Diamond System Builder when it comes.
Yeah. And I mean, if anybody has ever calculated the trim charge for a smart multi-system without Diamond System Builder, you know it can be kind of a headache, and it could be more prone to errors.
Yeah.
Because you're taking your total liquid line length in 1/4 inch, your total liquid line length in 3/8. You have multipliers. With the 410A equipment, it was different multipliers depending on the unit. Thankfully, it's the same too, regardless of the size now for 1/4 inch and 3/8. But you have to find your total indoor connected capacity, add that all together with your factory charge to get that total charge. It's a lot, right? It's a lot of steps. It's a lot of math. There's more room for error there. Diamond System Builder does all of it for you.
It makes it so much easier.
So you're already getting your trim charge done. Why not use the software to also make sure the installation is possible and allowed?
And now I want to stress while we're talking about DSB, it's an as-built. So I've always told people there's 2 times you should use DSB. The person going out to price the job and design it should be using DSB, and he's going to estimate the line lengths.
Sure.
And it'll tell him, hey, if you've exceeded the line lengths, it goes, okay, I'm going to go this distance here, and it'll punch it in. It'll tell you right away. So now he has to make changes.
Right.
That should be given to the installer. That file should be given to the installer. The installer should then take those dimensions, those estimated line lengths, and he should put the actual line lengths in there, and then he'll get the actual charge
100%.
that's needed. And that's for any Mitsubishi product.
Yeah.
Get a Diamond System Builder and use it. The software is available for download on my link drive.
Yeah. And not to beat, because I feel like we beat Diamond System Builder into the ground all the time, but also sizing.
Yeah.
Right? Because when we put in those line set lengths and we build our system, it tells us our heating and cooling outputs. So once we've done our manual J, we have our load calculation for a space, and we say this room needs 9,000 BTUs. Does that necessarily mean a 9,000 BTU indoor unit is going to satisfy the space? No, not until we put it in DSB and it gives us those heating and cooling
Good
outputs.
point.
Making sure we're sizing our equipment right. So there's a million things that are great about DSB. This is just an addition to adjust to the A2L stuff, just another tool in a sales or service.
And at the end of the day,
engineer's
keep
job.
track of your line lengths as you go along. Write them down somewhere, and that'll save you a lot of work. It's a lot less work getting your line lengths measured and written down beforehand, so you don't have to go running around with a tape measure later and guesstimating line sets, because the line sets go through walls, inside walls, and you're trying to guess what was in there.
Yeah.
keep track of your line sets, just like in the city multi-commercial world.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go back and listen to one of the podcasts we did on best piping practices. I don't know, it was over a year ago, but
Yeah.
start listening from the first one and just work your way to it.
Yep.
And I want to go back. I mentioned my link drive, but there's something different about the A2L equipment. So let's talk about that to make sure everybody knows about that.
Yeah. So the big thing, and it should be coming soon. Hopefully by the end of February, we'll start to see those manuals pop up. But we are, with any of our A2L equipment, it's no longer going to be put on MyLink Drive. MyLink Drive is a website. If you've ever been there, there's tons of information. And because of all that information, it's pretty much tapped out, right? That bandwidth on that web page is tapped out. So we're actually moving all of our manuals, including the A2L manuals, specifically to MitsubishiPro.com.
Yeah.
Now, here's the nice thing about that, and it's probably one of my favorite things that we've done, is now that it's on MitsubishiPro.com, the same web page can also get you to your contractor portal for signing up for classes and trainings, attending the free e-learnings that we have on there. So Mitsubishi Pro is basically your Mitsubishi hub now, as opposed to, okay, I want to look at classes, let me go to MitsubishiComfort.com. Well, now I need a manual, let me go to MyLink Drive. This is pulling all of Mitsubishi's resources into one web page, and just makes it really easy for, somebody who's working on our equipment a lot to get access to everything.
Mitsubishi Pro is a lot easier to remember.
That too.
For someone that's new to the Mitsubishi world.
So if you're used to looking on my link drive, that's okay.
Yep.
For existing equipment, the non-A2L, that is all still there. All the software is still
Yeah, it's
there.
not going anywhere.
No,
Right.
but new 454B and A2L equipment is going to be not going to be on my link drive. It's going to be on MPro, right? And I think eventually, and I'm hoping I'm not wrong about this, but I think eventually the long term goal is to move everything over from my link drive.
Yep.
So there'll be just one place, but for right now, for the short term, there'll be two places to get the information. So that's important.
Yeah, so you'll see it on MitsubishiPro.com now. If you search a A2L model number, it says coming soon, and we're hoping very, very soon we'll start to get those manuals uploaded, which would be awesome.
Right, and these products are going to be released in stages. Some indoor units and outdoor units released before others. As they get released, those manuals will be uploaded. So look for that. And you're right, now you can do everything from that website. Sign up for training.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think that just about covers Amin and Mmax. And we'll have some future episodes where we'll break down some of the items we talked about in the A2L kickoff part 1 and part 2, so that it doesn't overload you. Those episodes are
we did an info dump.
Yeah.
We did an information dump.
Yeah.
So it's good to kind of break down some of the more important elements as far as the transition goes.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
I think I'm going to get a burger for lunch, and I'm going to just have them put the cheese in the middle, right? Just like a Juicy Lucy.
You can't call it a Juicy Lucy, though.
No.
Because you're not in Minneapolis.
Yeah, what would I call it?
A cheeseburger with a cheese in the middle.
It's so original.
No, but you got to go to the Nook. I told you that.
Yeah, I'll do
And then
that.
we talked about cheese curds. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I have no idea what a cheese curd is.
Okay.
But it's basically deep fried cheese. It was one of the best things I've ever had. My
I
first.
was going to say, I've never had it before.
Oh, no. So you got to try that. My first trip with Mitsubishi, I was here for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I had to meet Jerry Flynn in Minneapolis. And we were going out to Duluth. Was it Duluth? I think it was Duluth, Minnesota. A couple hour drive up there, and we went to this place, and we got cheese curds and a burger. It was probably a Juicy Lucy for all I know. I don't remember, but the cheese curds, they were something.
Yeah.
I don't know what makes a cheese curd and what makes it as opposed to cheese.
Yeah, deep fried cheese curds are deadly. The cheese curds, I think, really come into play when they're on poutine.
That was what I was going to ask, because Minnesota is bordering Canada, so I wasn't sure if that's like a
probably get some
carryover.
really good poutine, I would definitely seek that out. But flying into Canada a few years ago, and the first restaurant that we stopped at, and we weren't even looking for poutine. We stopped at a burger joint and went in, and I looked up on the menu, poutine with gravy, cheese curds.
Oh.
What can go wrong?
Yeah, just
and
I need that in my life immediately.
And they give you a defibrillator.
And they were
Extra toilet paper for the morning.
fresh cut fries. That's important.
Yeah.
So if you talk to our Canadian counterparts at Mesca, they'll tell you it's going to be fresh cut fries. Don't mess
There's no
around.
fooling around.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll get hit with a hockey stick if you don't.
Yeah.
I like the options.
But if you ever go to central Wisconsin, they got the Central Wisconsin Airport there.
Yeah.
It's the only airport I've ever been in where the TSAs will ask, "You got any sausage or cheese in your bags?" Yeah. And I go, "What?" No one's ever asked me that before. No, and apparently it shows up different. On
I tried leaving La Crosse when we were out there for chiller training. Of course, I stopped for cheese before the airport at a little cheese shop, and they gave me a block of Wisconsin sharp cheddar. Now, this block was perfectly square. It had a gray wax on the outside of it. So it looked like a block of C4 explosive.
Right.
So the guy pulled it out of my bag and said, "What's this?" I said, "It's cheese." He said, "Okay." And he put it back in the bag. So
Didn't help that you stuck the wire.
He wiped it with a gunpowder swab and whatever, but it wasn't explosive. So
Anyway, enjoy. Let us know how it is when you come back.
I will have to.
all right, see you in the next one.